All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the Along the Watchtower podcast. Today is Thursday. I have no idea what date it is. It's Thursday, February 4th, 2021. The week is almost over, and they're still talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, that's her name. It's a weird name. It's a mouthful. She's also irrelevant. And here's the thing: like, there's a lot of stuff going on, but as the feeds are dominated with a particular topic, you have to sift more. The sifting requires more time and attention, and that can get irritating. But fear not. I highly doubt we'll be able to get through today's itinerary per usual, because there's just a litany of things going on. We're still backlogged a couple days. You're going to be hearing shit from a couple days ago, but like it's updated, right? They update some of these publications update their articles, so fear not. You will have to the minute news. I thankfully enough have stepped back from everything for today. I have no immediate frustrations because it seems that the Senate has begun the process of budget reconciliation. Now, as we know, they should have done this, a couple weeks ago. So we've lost a little time, but they are moving forward. Biden gave and we'll read about that. Biden gave the appropriate response to the Republican. The Republican, I don't want to say challenge, but the counter proposal, which saw 3 months of unemployment insurance, as opposed to what Biden's plan was with the 1,400, which I think was an extension of 6, and then they knocked it down by $100 per week. $350 billion taken off for states and cities. We saw the removal of the monthly child credit, the $15 minimum wage, which we're seeing being battled about now. Checks being reduced from $1,400 to $1,000, even though they should have been $2,000, and money for schools reduced. So, thankfully, he seems to grasp what it is that got them elected in the first place, and that's good. That's good news for us. That's good news going forward. I mean, if they go through with it. And it seems like that's going to be the case. Just before I came on to start recording, I found that the House had voted to remove MTG, we'll call her MTG, from her committee seats. Okay, fine. Thankfully, I believe we don't have anything on her today because we covered her yesterday. That's fine. Jewish space laser. You can't even say that without pausing. If you go and Google that, you'll find that they have to parse. I'm not even going to talk about it again. It doesn't matter. She blames the Rothschilds, not Jews, but the Rothschilds and other companies, for their space-based solar array that sends and it's like, come on, lady. But furthermore, come on, media. Whatever. It's whatever. So I generally, actually, I don't have a monologue today. So let's just, without further ado, let's get into it. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing, so I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to try to get better at it for you and for me. Yeah, let's do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity hack that happened a little while ago. Apparently, there was a second attack that has gone completely unreported. Well, not completely, because we're going to read an article about it now. So underreported, heavily underreported for obvious reasons. Won't look very good for the Biden administration if they're hit with the same issue that the Trump administration was hit with. I mean, it puts everyone on the even playing field of complicity. We get to point at everybody and say, see, you're all failures. See, there you go. He's a failure with a bad mouth and a bad attitude. But it's the politics as usual that got him elected in the first place. Let's keep that in mind. There's a reason why someone like a braggart, a narcissistic bully, got to the position that he did. Let's not completely absolve ourselves of blame here. But the Myanmar coup took place, and India is obviously expressing deep concern, seeing as how it's its neighbor, and if it's influenced by proxy by China, they're screwed. Uh, um, and let's see, impeachment stuff, weird stuff with COVID, even though we'll read back to back, right? So it's endemic, state level Republican groups. That's wrong article. Even though we read about the WHO and Moderna's CEO talking about COVID being endemic and it's here to stay. Bus driver killed wife in frenzied attack after she told him to leave home because he had COVID, even though that's not how quarantine goes. It's a horrible thing, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just saying, like, that's the reality of what's happening. But more COVID stuff. The UK variant, like a Category 5 hurricane, because it's very contagious. But I still haven't really seen any more news about it being deadlier. Excuse me. And other things to go with all of this lovely stuff. Sigh. Recently, actually, North Korea targeted cybersecurity researchers using hacking and espionage. So there's constantly hacks and things of that nature going on. This just took a brief 0.4 second search. What was it? 0.64. It gave me 8 million hits. Good old Google. So let's read. From Reuters, North Korean hackers have staged an audacious attack targeting cybersecurity researchers, many of whom work to counter hackers from places like North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran. The attack involved sophisticated efforts to deceive specific people, which raises the level of social engineering or phishing attacks and enters the realm of spy tradecraft. The attack, reported by Google researchers, centered on fake social media accounts on platforms including Twitter. The fake personas, posing as ethical hackers, contacted security researchers with offers to collaborate on research. The social media accounts included content about cybersecurity and faked videos purporting to show new cybersecurity vulnerabilities. The hackers enticed the researchers to click links to shared code projects, repositories of software related to cybersecurity research that contain malicious code designed to give the hackers access to the researchers' computers. Several cybersecurity researchers reported that they fell victim to the attack. So while this is happening, and phishing is old school, excuse me, let me just little bit about the North Korean operations. The North Korean operation is at a higher level than spear phishing because it targeted people who are security minded by the nature of their occupation. This required the hackers to create convincing social media accounts, and they had to talk the talk and walk the walk, complete with content about cybersecurity, including videos that could fool cybersecurity researchers. The North Korean operation highlights 3 important trends: stealing cybersecurity weapons from the industry, social media as a weapon, and the blurring of cyber and information warfare. The last one, all of us who are involved in sort of the disambiguation, the discerning of information related to politics, know very much about the last one, the blurring of the lines between cyber and information warfare, and really the second one as well. Because, social media as a weapon obviously is highly effective when it comes to politics, being able to reach masses of people in an instant, in a variety of different ways, whether it be through videos, through memes and GIFs, through just direct messaging, through live feeds, things of that nature, being able to create groups and consolidate like a solid base. You get hard numbers. People can see it, look at that, and be like, wow, this is really a movement. I want to see what this is about. Social media is a devastating weapon as far as it goes to politics, but as far as it goes to anything related to the interactions of people, so obviously espionage, it's a huge thing. Catfishing is a great spy craft, right? Pretending to be someone else, utilizing personal information that you have. You, for example, the jealous boyfriend, you catfish your girlfriend into meeting the guy who she thinks that she's going to meet and bang on the side. Oh, surprise, it's actually you. You utilized the human intel that you have and were able to catfish her. And I mean, obviously that works with randos as well. The point is that all of that is spycraft of the 21st century and beyond. The ability to use information to mask yourself, right? Everything is done. This is one of the cons of everything being remote and no longer analog, right? Information can be faked very easily, can be spoofed very easily. Phone numbers spoofed. I get all sorts of calls a day. Oh, your social security number has been suspended. Oh, you got to pay $1,500 cash in order da. Once you start to get the human interaction, you can immediately tell. You can discern very quickly, very easily that there's something afoot. But without that human interaction at all, not even the voice, it's very difficult. And so, this happens. But while this is happening, a second SolarWinds hack deepens third-party software fears. It appears that not only Russia, but also China targeted the company. A reminder that many of the ways interconnectedness can go wrong. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if you recall, when I some time ago when I was first talking about this, they were talking about Cozy Bear. I haven't heard anything about Cozy Bear. We haven't read anything about Cozy Bear. You see how slyly that's a very sly pivot. Sometimes they do very hard pivots and just immediately dismiss their previous statements. But this, you just in the media in general, you don't really hear the term Cozy Bear. You don't see it a lot. Now, perhaps we will in this article. I heard about the second hack, and then I immediately brought this up before I came on. I haven't read this yet, so we shall see. But don't count on it. And in fact, let's just do it right now. Cozy, not here. Bear, not here. Right. So it wouldn't surprise me if, as time has gone on, more evidence is pointed towards China rather than Russia. Because quite frankly, although both are definitely adversaries, to say the least, China is definitely a more immediate threat and has a more immediate grasp, or rather boot on our neck. But let me begin here from Wired. It's been more than 2 months since revelations that alleged Russia-backed hackers Cozy Bear broke into the IT management firm SolarWinds and used that access to launch a massive software supply chain attack. It now appears that Russia wasn't alone. Reuters reports that suspected Chinese hackers independently exploited a different flaw in SolarWinds products last year right around the same time, apparently hitting the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Finance Center. SolarWinds patched the vulnerability in December that alleged China hackers exploited, but the revelation underscores the seemingly impossible task that organizations face in dealing with not only their own security issues, but also potential exposure from the countless third-party companies they partner with for services that range from IT management to data storage to office chat. In today's interconnected landscape, you're only as strong as your weakest vendor. It's not realistic to depend on any third parties, says Katie Nichols, Director of Intelligence at the security firm Red Canary. It's not really realistic the way any network is run. But what we saw for the first week or two, even after the initial SolarWinds revelations, was some organizations just trying to figure out whether they even use SolarWinds products. So I think the shift has to be to knowing those dependencies and understanding how they should and shouldn't be interacting. So okay. So wasn't coordinated, wasn't at the same time, but this is the first we are hearing of it. I wonder why that is. What's interesting? Wait a minute. So last year around the same time. So you're telling me that these attacks happened almost concurrently. I mean, this is ridiculous. Why are we only hearing about this now? Am I really asking that question? Do we really have to ask that question? Unbelievable. So interestingly enough, the U.S. spent $2.2 million on a cybersecurity system that wasn't implemented. And it might have stopped a major hack. Let me stop pointing at you. The software company SolarWinds unwittingly allowed hackers code into thousands of federal computers. A cybersecurity system called InToto, which the government paid to develop but never required, might have protected against this. What a surprise. As America struggles to assess the damage from the devastating SolarWinds cyber attack discovered in December, both of them, this is what I'm saying, other publications aren't even talking about it. ProPublica has learned of a promising defense that could show up the vulnerability the hackers exploited, a system the federal government funded but has never required its vendors to use. The massive breach, which U.S. intelligence agencies say was likely Russian in origin, penetrated the computer systems of critical federal agencies, including Homeland Security, Treasury, Institutes of Health, and Department of Justice, as well as a number of Fortune 500 corporations. The hackers remained undetected, free to forage for months. The hackers infiltrated the systems by inserting malware into routine software updates that SolarWinds sent to customers to install on its products, which are used to monitor internal computer networks. Software updates customarily add new features, remove bugs, and boost security. But in this instance, the hackers commandeered the process by slipping in malicious code, creating secret portals called backdoors that granted them access to an untold bounty of government and company secrets. I mean, we know what happened without going too deeply into it. They bungled something else. Uh, I know some of the more conspiratorially minded out there will think, well, perhaps it was on purpose. There's no evidence of that, and so, this is what it is. Um, I'm not too interested as to why they bungled that up. Myanmar is a pivotal area. It's a pivotal country. Myanmar, Burma. It's a country and a pivotal point, in the region. Okay, it's between India and China. And India has expressed deep concern in the aftermath of the coup for obvious reasons. The country's leader has been detained in the coup with 1 year state of emergency being declared. The Ministry of External Affairs, reads YO News, is in its release saying that it has noted the developments in Myanmar, reminding that New Delhi has always been steadfast in its support to the process of democratic transition in Myanmar. We believe that the rule of law and the democratic process must be upheld. Myanmar's military seized power on Monday in a coup against the democratically elected government of the Nobel laureate, who was detained along with other leaders of her National League for Democracy. While India said it is monitoring the situation closely, more and more countries have reacted to the development. While Australian Prime Minister has called it disturbing, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, expressed grave concern, calling the military to reverse these actions. India and Myanmar have close ties with a number of engagements. Last year, in a significant visit, the Indian Foreign Secretary and Army Chief visited the country. Amid the pandemic, India has sent 1.5 million doses made in India COVID vaccines. So we'll see how that develops. As we know, the election is going to take place. The military is going to have the junta military is going to let it take place. However, the election will be overseen, I guess, by let me double check this. Myanmar elections. They're supposed to be overseen by the election oppositions, like a company the election opposition is involved with. So there's obviously some concern there. I feel like we read about that the other day. But yeah, we'll see how that develops. Text messages show top Trump campaign fundraisers key role in planning the rally that preceded the siege. Planning a rally is not planning a siege. God, but here we go nonetheless. In the week leading up to January 6th in Washington, D.C., that exploded, a top Trump campaign fundraiser issued a directive to a woman who had been overseeing planning for the event. Get the budget and vendors breakdown to me and Justin. Okay. I mean, after receiving the budget, I'm wondering if there's any illegality that they're alleging. And it doesn't seem to be. But I'm just, oh my God. It gets tiring repeating yourself over and over and over and finding that there's no real point, trying to have an honest and sobering look at things, especially given the level of partisanship involved, especially when 53% of Americans think that other Americans are the enemy, especially when something like 45% of the Republican Party are Trumpists, which is a significant part of the Republican Party, but not necessarily of America. Be that as it may, it's significant enough to cause a rallying cry for the other politicians that are Trumpists to rise through the ranks. And if that isn't curtailed, then slowly but surely you will have that level of zealotry and extremism coming out of the Republican Party ad nauseum. Just like you had neocons coming out after Bush, and it's a scary prospect. Like MTG is a scary prospect. This is only the beginning. I forgot the woman who Trump went and supported in Arizona. that got her the head of the seat of the Arizona Republican Party. Forgot her name. But let's keep going here. Pro-Trump priest leaves Wisconsin diocese after live streaming exorcisms of voter fraud. You see what I mean? First of all, the separation of church and state has always been a joke when simultaneously you have congressmen saying, well, this country was founded on Christian, beliefs and this and that. And it's like, yes, like from the start. And here's the thing. You can take a concept from anything and wield that concept elsewhere. This is why dogmas are so dangerous, because people who are dogmatic, people who are zealots, don't feel like they have to, subscribe to everything that's a part of a movement, rather than supporting the things that work. And if there are things that don't work that are far beyond their ethics and morals, to not support it at all, to stand on your own 2 feet for the things that you support. You don't need a group to stand for your principles. You don't need a political party to stand for your principles. Again, always follow your principles, follow good policy, never a politician, a person, or a political party. That being said, when you have psychos like the nutbag Trump supporter, the snake, I'm pretty sure he's a snake Trump supporter. Well, I'm pretty sure that the article made note to make sure to say he was a Trump supporter. But the minister who ended up, the snake minister who got himself killed and got bitten, and I'm sure that happens plenty often, but this was one instance in which it was reported upon. That level of zealotry it's toxic and poisonous, and it goes both ways. Okay, for the left, you have, and I'm not pointing to the Aspen bombing in particular, because just because you spray Earth First doesn't mean that Earth First had anything to do with it. They claim they didn't. But you have eco-terrorists. You have the Weatherman Underground. You've had the SDS, right? The Students for Democratic Society, which the Weatherground broke out of. Then SDS became kind of violent. Anyway, I digress. The point is that the 60s, 70s were tumultuous times in which political violence was a real and common thing. On both sides of the ladder, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the coin. But anyway, pro-Trump priest leaves Wisconsin diocese after live streaming exorcisms of voter fraud. Exorcisms of voter fraud. How do you exorcise the voter fraud let me just read. A priest who live streamed exorcisms aimed at rooting out what former President Donald Trump, and some Trump supporters have falsely claimed was widespread voter fraud in the presidential election, has left the Roman Catholic Diocese in Wisconsin. Wow, that's a huge preface. The Diocese of Madison said it and the Reverend John Zoldorf reached a mutual decision on his departure. Zoldorf will relocate from the diocese to pursue other opportunities. The Bishop of Madison Zoldorf claimed he had permission from Madison Bishop Donald Hying to conduct the exorcisms. Hying said, however, that he didn't give Zoldorf permission to conduct exorcisms related to partisan political activity, right, separation of church and state, but rather approved an exorcism for alleviating from the scourge of the coronavirus pandemic. Recordings of Zoldorf's exorcisms have since been removed from YouTube. What? The Wisconsin State Journal reported. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops defines an exorcism as... Oh, come on. Was he trying to exorcise people or trying to exercise the election? I think I'm going to go and try to find those videos. I'm deeply curious about that. So we're coming. I mean, we still got a long way to go. We actually might make the itinerary today. So we're moving now into crazy town with this back and forth situation going on in the Senate. But first, before we do, let's talk about the First Amendment. Apparently, it has been violated. And people say, "Oh, my First Amendment's been violated." It's like, all right, let's see what you're talking about. University of Colorado Boulder violates the First Amendment, punishes Trump lawyer for election claims. Surprise? Is anyone surprised? Now, here's the thing. From an academic standpoint, and this is actually like the representative that was on the Harvard Law Board that got removed. Now they never actually quote these people's claims. They might quote his claim, but in the case of the woman I'm talking about, whose name I can't remember, they didn't quote her claim. There's no video of it, as far as I know. But I'm presuming, since she's part of the Harvard Law Review Board, that her claim had something to do with the electoral process. Her challenging the results is one thing. Challenging the process or pointing out irregularities or discrepancies in the process is a completely different thing, and something that I would hope someone on the Harvard Law Review Board would do. Something that I would hope a representative of the United States government would do is say, hey, Michigan, doesn't your state electoral process point out that if the adjudication logs for the Dominion systems used in a voting election are missing, that you're supposed to conduct an investigation to find out what happened to them? Well, I mean, I feel like you might want to do that. No? All right, that's it. Okay. I followed the process. I pointed out a discrepancy, an error, an anomaly. After that, you get a little bit of that. What do you want to do? So for these people to be punished for pointing out anomalies, for asking questions, this is a dangerous precedent. It's a dangerous precedent to set. As a person who has been met with the wrath of people who don't want questions being asked, or because they don't have answers, become uncomfortable by the question being asked. I can't imagine what that must be like when one is on a public platform or on a higher scale in life, a higher class. But let's read here. University of Colorado Boulder violates the First Amendment, punishes Trump lawyer for election claims, reads thefire.org. Never heard of them. The First Amendment is clear. A public university cannot cancel a professor's courses, withdraw his role in organizing campus discussions, and preemptively decline to renew his contract because of anger over his extramural political expression. Even though that's been happening across the board for some years now, starting with Brent, what's his name? Weinstein. Oh, shoot. But anyway, but that's exactly what the University of Colorado Boulder did to the visiting professor John Eastman after he gave a 3-minute speech at then President Donald Trump's January 6 Washington rally, well before the political violence that followed. Today, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education wrote to CU Boulder explaining that, as the university's administration recognized, Eastman's speech did not amount to unlawful incitement within the meaning of the First Amendment. Fire's letter calls on the university to rescind the unconstitutional sanctions imposed on Eastman. So let's just get this. Let me read that again. As the university's administration recognized, Eastman's speech did not amount to unlawful incitement within the meaning of the First Amendment. So the school acknowledges this is where you're seeing within education, within academia, the politicizing of education. The school acknowledges he didn't break the law, that he exercised his First Amendment successfully and didn't commit any illegalities in doing so. And yet they fired him anyway. And they fired him, and it seems, I don't know, we'll continue reading, but, okay, well, let me continue reading, because here, CU Boulder's initial response to demands that it take punitive action against Eastman seemed to understand the law. On January 7th, the chancellor cited campus policy correctly explaining that the university will not censor a faculty member's political statements or initiate disciplinary action because it disapproves of them. He went on to say the policy stems from the First Amendment and I will not violate the law by removing a visiting professor. So they support the professor's exercising of his First Amendment. We're letting this unfold. So wait a minute. So the school says he didn't break any laws. They support him or they support his exercising of the First Amendment. They may not like politically where he stands, as it's seen since he got fired, but they support his exercising and cite the First Amendment as reason for doing so. So let's continue reading. How did they end up firing him then? It seems like they're doing their job, or were at the time. Similarly, Professor Daniel Jacobson, director of the Benson Center at CU Boulder, where Eastman is a visiting scholar in conservative thought and policy, stated that the center defends the right of its scholars to express unpopular opinions within the limits of the law, ergo not citing violence or proliferating hate speech, and acknowledged that Eastman did not call for the violence that occurred after the event. Bingo. And his speech is protected by the First Amendment. Blam. It's a very easy thing. right? If a man says, hey, we need to make sure that conservatives are within the government and that, Donald Trump is our representative of the GOP, needs to, be reelected. God bless you and God bless America. You may not agree with what he's saying as far as your political stance goes, but it's not violence and it's not hate speech. And it's really the same fucking rhetoric you hear at every political rally known to man. At the very least, everyone that I've ever been to. And oh my God. So on January 10th, as public anger, and that's what it is. As public anger, as the court of public opinion, as the Twitter mob over the violence at the Capitol election rhetoric mounted, Eastman was notified by Jacobson that his classes were canceled, his responsibilities were rescinded, and his contract would not be renewed. He was forbidden to engage in outreach on behalf of the Benson Center or use campus resources for those purposes, lest he be charged with insubordination. How can you be charged with insubordination if, he's still technically under contract, right? So the reason, terrible press, the school's reputation, and pressure from supporters of the Benson Center, wrote Jacobson. Did they really tell him that? Did they just tell him to his face, like, yeah, man, you're just a bad look? The university's rationales for punishing Professor Eastman are fundamentally at odds with the basic principles of free expression, said Fire's Adam Steinberg in Fire's letter to the school. If donor interests, public anger, reputation, and administrators' ire are sufficient to grant the institution the authority to punish members of its faculty, then only speech popular with donors, the public, and administrators are protected. This inverts the purpose of the First Amendment. We don't really need to go any further. So, yeah. Wow. That's not surprising. And that's all I have to say on that. I knew that was going to be punishingly gray as far as enjoyment. Like, I knew I was going to be satisfied. I read the headline. I was like, you know what? I have no idea who this gentleman is, and it doesn't matter. But you're seeing the politicization of academia, which is another dangerous precedent that really creates indoctrinated zealots rather than curious-minded people. But I digress. Mitch McConnell received donations from voting machine lobbyists before blocking election security bills. Is anyone really surprised? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell squashed two bills intended to ensure voting security on Thursday. This was back on July 19th, I should say. Back on Thursday, just one day after former special counsel Robert Mueller warned that Russians were attempting to sabotage the 2020 presidential elections as we sit here. McConnell said he would not allow a vote on the bills because they were so partisan. But as previously reported earlier this year, McConnell received a slew of donations from 4 of the top voting machine lobbyists in the country. Of course, the plans would likely burden the 2 largest electronic voting machine vendors in the United States, Election Systems and Software, and Dominion, with new regulations and financial burdens. So, of course, fast forward to the election, to which there were a ton of problems with Dominion voting systems, and the rest is history. And keep this in mind as well, Mitch McConnell is a staunch enemy of Trump and always has been, and has always wanted to wield the power of the GOP for himself. I mean, he basically has for the last 30 or something years, 40 years, something like that. But yeah, we don't need to go much further in this. I just found this interesting. I don't even know how it cropped up. And it's like, oh, well, that creates some intrigue as far as his lack of interest in wanting to deal with any sort of election anomalies, discrepancies, or errors that may have occurred. Go figure. Moving along, Trump's top impeachment lawyer has left his team. No, let me stop. Let's be mature. Let's be adults. It is amusing though. But they're wondering if they're even going to bring witnesses. Like, the whole thing is just one big hilarity. How do you even, and it's unprecedented. How do you bring charges of impeachment, criminal charges against a president that's no longer president? He's a private citizen. I don't understand. No one really knows how this is going to go, which is one of the reasons why the Senate's kind of reluctant to even bring witnesses. But just for days before, this was back in January, by the way. I didn't realize that he had walked away that long ago. But see, and I see we're catching up. So his lawyer leaves. The impeachment managers call on Trump to testify. Instead of calling witnesses, they call on Trump specifically. Impeachment managers call on Trump to testify from the Hill. The House impeachment managers on Thursday formally requested that Trump testify under oath in his Senate impeachment trial, which kicks off next week, of which his top lawyer, has left. Representative Jamie Raskin, the Democrats' lead impeachment manager, sent a letter to Trump and his attorneys alleging that the former president's defense, outlined Tuesday in a legal brief, denies irrefutable facts about Trump's role in the insurrection on the Capitol. You have thus attempted to put critical facts at issue, notwithstanding the clear and overwhelming evidence of your constitutional offense, Raskin wrote. In light of your disputing these factual allegations, I write to invite you to provide testimony under oath, either before or during the Senate impeachment trial concerning your conduct on the 6th. I would definitely wait on that. He's invited to. He doesn't have to. To clear up the alleged discrepancies, Raskin has asked Trump to testify and face cross-examination as early as Monday and not later than February 11th. So then yes, he does. He's asked him to testify. Again, he doesn't have to, suggesting the testimony would not necessarily be in the Senate chamber or even in the public. We would be pleased to arrange such testimony at a mutually convenient time and place. Trump did not testify at his first impeachment hearing, nor did the Senate trial that followed. His attorney said Thursday he would not testify in his second trial either, dismissing Raskin's request as a public relations stunt. Exactly. So I was like, you might not want to do that. That second trial began on Tuesday? No, it begins next Tuesday. Behind Speaker Pelosi, the House impeached Trump last month. Capitol the single impeachment article is like 1 page long, charged Trump with inciting insurrection. It passed on the House floor with the support of 10 Republicans. Exactly a week after the siege. On Tuesday, Trump lawyers issued a legal brief forecasting their defense. It hinges on two primary arguments. All right, here we go. First, that Trump is constitutionally ineligible to face an impeachment. Oh my God, you guy. They're not going to go for the. Are they going to? No, they're not going to go for the First Amendment. Oh, they are going to go for, because it's like that should be your first leading argument, a constitutional one, making it the. All right, let's stop. First, that Trump is constitutionally ineligible to face impeachment trial because he's no longer in office. Second, that he had every right under the First Amendment to protest what he felt was a corrupt election process and to encourage his supporters to join him in urging Congress to reject the outcome. If those supporters turned violent, the defense suggested that was outside the realm of Trump's influence. Unless he called directly for them to do so, you can't, you know what I mean? And I think it would set a dangerous precedent if you were to charge anyone, whether it be an asshole or an angel, with inciting a riot if they weren't actually inciting a riot. This works across the board. I'm reading former Sanders press secretary, lowering income threshold for stimulus checks would undermine Biden administration's COVID-19 response. He was saying that if you tried to do that or lower the stimulus check, Biden, that it would be his administration starting off with broken promises. There's some of the rhetoric coming out of the administration is actually pretty good. Some of the actions, although they're kind of late, like starting budget reconciliation, I appreciate that it's even moving in that direction. But to continue on this point, if the First Amendment, to continue reading, if the First Amendment protected only speech to government deemed popular in current American culture, it would be no protection at all. Are we seeing a theme here? Right, the university's rationale, right? So it only deems sufficient the speech that is popular with donors, the public, and administrators that is protected. That inverts the purpose of the First Amendment. Are we seeing a pattern here? Right, and I'm trying to paint this picture where it's like you can't punish someone for saying something you don't like. It does come down to that. A man that is collectively detested did not necessarily say anything that started something none of us appreciate, but we're trying to pin it on him nonetheless because everything about him is just disgusting and despicable, and everywhere he goes, he causes despair and misery. However, under the fucking law, he didn't do anything, at least there, in that instance. Because, God, I mean, the man's done a litany of more shit. But, because the problem here is many fold. People being persecuted, politically persecuted, is a dangerous step. The Orwellian present is real, and it's a fucking nightmare. Republican operatives sweat Trump's role in upcoming Senate primaries. All right. We often, because of MTG, because of Trump, we have people like MTG. It's funny, like the first sort of crop that has risen up of the Trumpists have been like females. And I don't know. It's only been two that I've read about so far, so I'm not sure where to judge that, where to put that. And it's like, question mark. But we see the rise of ideologues, zealot, overzealous ideologues rising through the cream of the crops of the party and taking note, whether they actually believe it or not, like Ted Cruz flip-flopping all over the place like a dead fish out of water, whether they believe it or not, wielding the political influence that comes with zealotry, the die-hard Trumpist that really just can't let go. And I mean, the delusion, the cognitive dissonance is extraordinary. But let's read. CNN reads in CNN, green checkmark, NewsGuard. Republicans tasked with taking back the Senate in 2022 are preparing for a contentious primary season, especially in Ohio, fearful that Donald Trump could use his popularity inside the party to back candidates who could struggle in statewide races. Trump has long been drawn to backing candidates who have shown unending allegiance to him, and Republican operatives believe that that desire, especially after losing the election, will be unchanged 2 years later. But the fear among some operatives is that Trump will be even more of a free agent outside of the White House, less willing to bow to pressure that party leaders like Mitch McConnell put him on to back candidates they believe have a better chance to win statewide. Compounding this issue is a Senate map that is shaping up to test the Republican Party. Of the 34 Senate races in the country next year, Republicans will be tasked with defending 20 seats compared to the 14 for Democrats. And of those 20 seats, 2 will be in states where Joe Biden won, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and 4 will be in traditional battleground states, Florida, Ohio, Iowa, and North Carolina. Democrats' most endangered seats will be in Georgia and Arizona, 2 states where the party won special elections in 2020. The Trump dynamic, operatives said, could play out in a very dramatic ways. While the party apparatus may subtly lack certain candidates in key Senate primaries, Trump could weigh in to back candidates who have been openly loyal to him, creating a clear rift between party leaders and the former president. It's incredibly complicating. It was incredibly complicated over the last few years, and we had at least a seat at the table. He has left the building, so any leverage that Senate Republicans possibly had that they could possibly utilize to get him on the same page are no longer options. And that's the problem. How do you reel in a narcissist when you have no leverage? He's often can do anything he wants. He's been shunned by literally everyone on the planet. So he's like held up at Mar-a-Lago, his private fortress, kind of just wielding power like Sauron from afar, making moves and maneuvering the Republican Party that he really is barely a part of. And he's seated inside the Republican Party this ideology of, no holds bar madness, right? This sort of, and here's the thing one has to ask themselves: how did MTG get elected if this was her candor? If this was how she was to begin with, how is it that she managed to get elected? And the answer is that if constituents were well aware of who she was and where she stood on things beforehand, and mind you, she hasn't really made any moves on the committees that she got kicked off of, so we're not necessarily talking about policy yet. We haven't seen the woman's policy. We've only heard her rhetoric, and her rhetoric is enough, right? Because here's the whole thing. Do you want someone unhinged that thinks laser beams are causing wildfires to make policy first before you realize that perhaps putting her in a position of power was not the best idea? It's like, no. You don't wait for the child to shoot the handgun to know that that's not a good idea. You take the handgun away. So you're going to see a lot more of this. You're going to see a lot more of insubordinate children within the party. And here's the thing. It isn't that I'm against insubordination within the party. I'm against political parties altogether. So rocking the boat is one thing, but to outright, I don't know, to speak in this sort of paracosm, like this alternate reality you live in and apply that to reality. That's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing. That's a dangerous person to be giving power to. Oh boy. So that said, House Dems make case for conviction. Trump denies charges, of course. Donald Trump endangered the law. Oh God. AP's gonna tell a narrative. House. Okay, so Donald Trump endangered the lives of all members of Congress when he aimed a mob of supporters like a loaded gun at the Capitol. House Democrats said Tuesday, in making their most detailed case yet for why the former president should be convicted and permanently barred from office. Trump denied the allegations through his lawyer and called the trial unconstitutional. Yes. It's endemic. State-level Republican groups lead parties drift to extremism. Here we go. This is the juicy tidbit at the end of the show here, because the rest of it's COVID. Despite national failures at the ballot box, radicalized state parties are fighting for Trump's election lies and defending QAnon followers. This is from The Guardian, so prepare for another narrative. Not a lot of news. This isn't even an opinion. This should be an opinion. Okay, I just read the first. Let me just read it. In Arizona and Oregon, they rebuked opponents of Donald Trump's assault on democracy. In Hawaii, they defended followers of the QAnon conspiracy movement. And in Texas, they adopted a slogan with dark historical connotations. We are the storm. More narrative, not really a lot of news. But we'll see, the news is there. The news, the overarching point of that is that in Arizona and Oregon, they didn't like Trump. In Hawaii, they defended, they liked Trump. And in Texas, they liked Trump. I'm sorry, in Arizona and Oregon, they liked Trump. They rebuked opponents of Donald Trump's assault on democracy. And it's like, that's the content, but then it's masked in all of the narrative. They rebuked opponents of Donald Trump's assault on democracy. It's like, come on. Just tell me that they leaned one way or the other without trying to skew it in a way that influences me. But to understand the failure and the future of the Republican Party, start with the army of increasingly radicalized foot soldiers who shaped it at a state level. Far from responding to the loss of the White House to Joe Biden by tacking to the political center, local parties appear to be racing to the extreme right by giving safe harbor to... Okay, is there any this should be an opinion. I almost got considered, oh my God, they're all white nationalists and QAnon and this and that. The central story of American politics right now is that one of the two parties is radicalizing against democracy in front of our fucking Chris Hayes. This isn't an article. This is an op-ed. Okay. The Republican Party has been drifting towards right-wing populism for years, with notable examples including the Tea Party movement, the nomination of Sarah Palin for VP, and the total capitulation to Trump. There we go. Now we're getting some news. Moderate Republicans hoped that Trump's failures at the ballot box, he was the first president since 1932 to lose re-election, the House and the Senate, might generate an autopsy similar to, referendum, an autopsy similar to that which followed Mitt Romney's defeat 8 years ago, and a reset aimed at broadening its appeal. But recent evidence suggests that state parties are embracing Trumpism with renewed zeal, along with the fantasies of the far-right fringe. And then more narrative. Okay, but that just pretty much supports what I've been saying. Because, oh my God, I gotta read through this stuff, and it's just like, oh my God. And here's the thing. Don't get me wrong. Pointing out the fact that a good portion of the party subscribes to this nonsense is definitely worth pointing out. But there seems to be very little analytical perspective taken here. It's like their assault on democracy, their obscene anti-Semitic, and it's like, not everyone who supported Trump is a QAnon supporter. You know that not everyone that supported Trump is a white nationalist. You do realize this, I hope, but obviously not, because that's not the point. As we saw with the representative on the Harvard Law Board, this guy here on the University of Colorado, the idea is to engender danger with anything related to this man. good or bad, happy or sad. There was a poll that I was reading just today that was talking about national satisfaction, and it's like before COVID hit, 45%. He had a satisfactory rate of 45%. I'm not suggesting there weren't problems. There was a litany of problems. We can literally spend an hour or more talking about them, but the reality still is the reality. Like how I feel about what's going on is one way, one thing, and what is happening is also a one thing and one way. So, take it as you want to. It is what it is. So this wholesale demonization is a dangerous path, as most of what we read every day is a dangerous path, step by step, day by day. So we shall see. We did not get to COVID or Biden, but just a quick little thing. We'll get to it tomorrow. Talk about that bus driver. CDC issues rule requiring travelers to wear a face mask. Johnson & Johnson files for emergency COVID approval. This is an interesting comment. UK COVID variant like a category 5 hurricane, epidemiologists say. So we'll see what he means by that. We've always been talking about this. The UK variant is more contagious, and they're finding that it could possibly have a higher mortality rate, but we still have to let time go on a little bit more to find out more about that. Top Biden advisor says schools are on track to be open by April. Where did 80 experimental Pfizer vaccine test subjects go? We'll get into that tomorrow. It's from the Israeli news, so we'll see how credible that is. But Senate Democrats begin the budget reconciliation process for the stimulus checks. So that's good news. We'll talk about that tomorrow, and we'll hopefully. And the whole thing is they did this as a response to the Republican counterproposal, which was just parse and spared and whatever nonsense. So that being said, please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. We're gonna keep hanging in there, all right? Gorillas unite, diamond hands. This is not financial advice, but yes, be well.